What's up, everybody? Welcome into an inaugural edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host today, Kevin Misseri, here with my main man, Mike Bunt. We have a lot of action to break down today, Mike. We have a ton of stuff on the free agency front to talk about with everybody. We also have what do the Bills need to do to keep up in this AFC arms race that gets busier and busier every time we turn around. So we have that to talk about. We have what is the Going Deep podcast coming at you? What does that mean? What are we going to bring you? What is the energy that's going to happen here on this show? So we're going to break down to that, tell you who we are a little bit, as well as we can't forget jersey giveaway. If you haven't already, we will announce that after the show. So get on there, check it out, retweet it. We'd love for one of you live listeners to win that jersey, signed, official, everything there from the Going Deep podcast, as well as Cover One Sports. So we're here today to bring you all the week in review. That's what this show is going to be about every week, and to prepare for the upcoming matchup as we drive closer to the season. Mike, how are you today? And let's hear it.
I'm doing great. It's the funnest time of the year. Good weather in Buffalo. You got NFL free agency and then the NCAA tournament going on. It's a beautiful time, and it's a great time to be a Bills fan.
Yeah, appreciate you, RJ. Yeah, we're proud to be here, man. We've podcasted, Cover One, close friends of mine. We've been through this before, so I love everything that we do here. Mike Bunt's been a great addition to the team. Brought you some good action across many different platforms too. You've seen him across UB Land. You've seen him in other places here across Buffalo. So pleasure to have Mike here. So really great interacting with you guys. But we have to really get into it now. Like this is a big week. Even myself included, I was getting a little antsy as one of Brandon Beane's biggest fans, biggest supporters since day one, really turned this franchise around the moment he stepped in after the draft post Whaley. Mike, I have to give it to him this week. Was an insane week, signing Von Miller to a record 6 for $120, which some people are calling the biggest free agency signing ever. It's insane. There's a lot to like about that signing. He is a playoff bound player, Mike. Why don't you talk to me about that for a minute? I want you to tell me what you think what that signing will bring to the Bills, specifically, like what in the biggest moments when there's 13 seconds left, when there's, even before that, when your offense is ticking on all cylinders, what does it mean to have a pass rusher like Von Miller now in the building, someone who shows out in big time games?
Yeah, he's an unbelievable difference maker that really elevates them to that championship level. The Bills already had a roster capable of winning a Super Bowl, but now you have a finisher. This is a guy that steps up in the biggest moments, in the biggest games. Just look at his stats in the playoffs with Denver and then last year with LA. He's a guy that gets it done. And a lot of people, when he was originally signed for the money, the money was the first thing that popped out. They were scared. 6 years, $120 million. You break it down, it's more like a 3-year deal. Not really concerned overall about the money for the most part. But this is a guy that could still play. Aaron Quinn, he shared these stats on his Twitter feed the other day. 82 pressures, 13 sacks, 10 hits, 59 hurries, and a 20.4% win rate last year at 32 years old. This is a guy that's still elite at his position. And that's really what the Bills needed. Last year, it wasn't like their pass rush was awful. They were still decent. They still got a decent amount of sacks and could generate pressures, but they didn't have that guy that just instilled fear in opposing quarterbacks and offensive lines. Von Miller is that person. And right now, with a guy like that, when you have a double-digit lead and it's lead in the third quarter, fourth quarter, you're going all out, and opposing quarterbacks are going to be shitting themselves. They're going to be scared because this is a guy that puts that fear into opposing offenses.
Yeah, and the Bills weren't done there, Mike. They went on and added to the defensive line. We've had Jordan Phillips signed pretty much the moment he was released in his pretty big contract, 3 for $30 that he signed. The Bills gave him all their blessing, clearly keep good rapport with their players. What could happen with someone like Robert Woods? We joke around about all the time about players coming in from Carolina, but I tweeted it earlier. Like, what might be the new Carolina? Ex-Bills players. That might be the next pipeline of players that are like, hey, you played your best underneath us. You went out and got paid. Now come back and continue to show your best. I think there's something to that. So the Bills continue to build that pipeline, kind of call it a recruiting network, kind of call it whatever you want, any other business. They're building that pipeline of players that they can pick from and say, we had a really good experience from Jordan Phillips. We can go back and entertain that and then be able to make a move, getting rid of Star and really saying, we don't really care if we only save $1 million. We get another player in Phillips. We think he'll be more productive. We free up money in the future, which is great because they're pushing these contracts into the future. Like Poyer potentially, but you've already had someone like Milano pushed out into the future. You could have, others, Hyde and others be pushed out in the future at some point if they need to take those cap coupons. So you need to get that off the books, even if it only saves you $1 million in a roster spot. That's a pretty big note. And I think you want to take the pill now. I think that's basically the reason for taking it today. Because you're pushing so much money into future years. You don't want to necessarily push Star into the future years. You're not going to get as much relief this year, but it does really take his entire contract off the books. And quite frankly, call it what it is. The Bills roster is really good. Like, you need the roster spot, and that is just as important right now, Mike, as the salary cap. Salary cap is something that I'm big into. I love the salary cap. Our own Greg Thompson's, his own genius at it. So I like to talk to Greg about the salary cap all the time, and it's something that I've usually like to bring to the table. And you know what? At some point, you'd rather eat it this year because you were expecting to pay him anyway. So a lot of people are like, "You're never going to cut Star. You're never going to cut him because he's free." Like, yeah, essentially free to the cap, but he's not free cash, and he's not free in the sense that he's a roster spot. And you're going to take money off of next year by eating it this year. So it's kind of that credit card mentality. If you're going to take out credit card bills like you have with other players on the roster, like Matt Milano, like, you don't want to necessarily continue to push more credit card bills into the future. So I think it's smart to keep them pre-June 1st. So that, I hope, is hopeful for why they didn't do it. And then also, yeah, we see some stuff in the chat here. Like, yeah, absolutely. You don't get that cap relief until June 1st. So I mean, yes, that could be worth it in Star's case, to keep that pill and save a little bit more. But also, do they really need that relief off a Star? Not necessarily. And really, Cole Beasley's seeing really the same savings either way. So there's really no reason to take that minimal cap hit, dead cap hit, and pushing it into next year. So they just take it this year. They've already saving a lot of money from Cole Beasley. So they needed to kind of eat that relief this year, Mike. So continuing down the path of the D-line, that's kind of the topic we're on today right now, kind of reviewing this. And that's really where we've seen some moves settle. Jones, they've made some really good free agent additions here. And then you add in the fact of my guy, Shaq Lawson, coming back. We were glad to bring you the Shaq Lawson news. It was a long awaited signing. We're glad that finally got done based on what we were hearing. So glad that finally came to the fold. He signed that contract, as Jordan Phillips joked with him in his press conference. So, Mike, all in all, we talked about Von. We've talked about the defensive line in general, the 3 young players at the defensive position that Bean has sunk assets into. How does that room look to you now that it's pretty much, maybe a late pick or something, but pretty much complete?
It looks good to me. I don't know how you can't be pleased with some of these season additions that the Bills have made. Obviously, losing Harrison Phillips, a fan favorite, a guy that was tremendous in the community, is a loss in many regards. But they filled that admirably with a couple of great additions. You look at a guy like Settle, who is going to add another pass rushing element from the D tackle position. Huge upside. He's really a guy that's untapped potential. And those are the guys that I like to sometimes take a risk on, a low risk, high reward type of player. And then you add in Jones, who's going to just be a monster inside and take up space. Losing Star Lotulelei, it kind of seemed inevitable after the first couple moves. And then, like you said, Jordan Phillips really hasn't had an amazing last couple of years after leaving Buffalo, but he's still a guy that has a motor and has the ability to get to the quarterback. And Shaq Lawson, same thing, kind of has had a tough couple seasons, but a guy that still is capable of producing some depth, quality depth at his position. So I think it's encouraging the way that they've constructed this defensive line. And you look at this defense now, top to bottom, it is looking very strong. There are only a few holes, and we'll address those later. But this unit looks even better than it was last year, and that was the number 1 defense in the NFL.
Yeah, it certainly was. What an addition. Maybe what they were lacking was that game-wrecking edge that had some good talent, really good in pressures. We talk about it all the time on all of our other shows here on the Cover One Network. Our pressure rate's good. Was it as bad as people thought? No, sometimes it just, even myself, I found myself like rage tweeting, or like, people yell at me all the time. And it's like, let's take a step back and kind of look at it from the perspective of how good was it? And I think it was better than many people led to believe. They started to accumulate sacks later on in the year. Harrison Phillips came on strong for the Bills later on.
That's a
so
cover
it is
one favorite discussion. Let's be real. That's a cover one favorite discussion is pressure rate, because a lot of us fans, we look at the numbers, we look at the box scores, and we get enamored with sacks. And yes, sacks have a tremendous value. It means you're getting to the quarterback, and you have a chance to create takeaways. But you also have the ability to create takeaways just by getting a hand in their face, getting a pressure, forcing a quick release. Even if you don't get that sack, your secondary has an opportunity to make a play. So you look at quarterbacks like Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, any of the good guys in the league, and look at their numbers when they're pressured, and it is not even close to the same as when they have a clean pocket. So obviously you need sacks. That's why you get a guy like Von Miller. But pressure rate is also incredibly important, because let's be real, what percentage of times do you get a pressure that actually results in a sack? It's not that high.
Right. And what's funny, I like this point here by Dwayne as well. Thank you for tuning in, Dwayne. Really appreciate it. So much for getting younger. Like the GM definitely, he's great. Like usually if there's leaks, it's definitely not from the Bills side. Don't forget there's a couple of facets to a discussion. There's the Bills, and basically what they tell agents, so we think and hear, is that don't say anything or that'll make us mad and we won't do business with you in the future. Some variation of that. Like some variation of like, we like to keep this in-house. Like we don't want this getting out. Like we don't want you going to shop our offer as being said as much with Von Miller. Like, are you serious? We might need to use that money elsewhere. So like, we need to know if you're going to just chop us to LA, because that's to me what it felt like, as we said in our short videos. And also check out our shorts that we're releasing. You'll see those on the Cover One Network as well through our Twitters. We're releasing shorts, buy or sell segment. So GS, we're going to always, GDP shorts that we're going to have that kind of stuff all the time. So we did one just recently on Von, and to us, like the biggest shocker was that, quite frankly, it was the same question Bean had. Like, are you just going to shop it to LA? Like that was really the question. He loved LA, played super well there once he was traded. Bean said he checked in Denver. So like to us, it was never really on the full. Everyone's talking about Chandler Jones. Are they going to trade for Hunter? Like what exactly is going to happen there? And quietly, he was one of the two people that reached out to the Bills. Who's the second? That's still a fun topic of discussion. Was it another edge? Was it another corner? Was it a cornerback? Who reached out? Because that's really interesting to me. Like, who also reached out, and are they still available? Like, are they still somewhere? Interesting nugget. Or was it someone like Chandler Jones, which is, an expectation that it could have been. So the Bills needed to know real quickly if Von Miller was shopping their offer, because they at the same time, they would have lost Chandler Jones and Von Miller. So that would have been a big blow to Bean had he. So that's how he does business. Like, and then you had a slight leak to this because of a GM change, and you didn't expect the Giants to well, maybe you did, to hire the Bills assistant GM. So, when he left, when Shane left, you're kind of thinking in your head when he made that comment, and I didn't even believe it. Like, the Bills were expected to be big spenders. And you're thinking, Mike, big spenders, like with this salary cap, they still need to move some things around, potentially some re-signings. What are they going to do here and there? I don't know. That was an interesting comment that he made. I didn't really believe that comment. And I sit back and I'm like, maybe he was in on the talks and he kind of slipped in his getting excited in New York, because I follow a lot of New York accounts due to my other fanhoods of other sports teams. But they were expecting him to say something to be prepared, and he came out and kind of leaked out a little bit. So that was like a really interesting note.
I think there were some tea leaves throughout the offseason, the beginning of free agency,
few more than normal,
that gave away that the Bills might be looking to make a significant move, even if they're not talking it up. Obviously, you don't want to raise expectations and then have fans disappointed when something doesn't happen. See here, J.C. Jackson was the other reach out. I thought I saw Nate Gary mentioned that the other day on Twitter as well, possibly.
Okay.
But when obviously you had the Shane comment, and then right leading into free agency, a few reporters mentioned about the two big name marquee players reaching out to the Bills at the combine. And then just the way free agency started, a couple value defensive tackle signings where you're not going big budget, you're cutting Darrell Williams, you're adding Saffold. They were smart moves, but they weren't moves that seemed to really shift things significantly one way or another. It felt like the Bills were building up to something much bigger. And like you said, we thought that might be Chandler Jones. We thought maybe this is a push for another edge rusher. I know they were interested in the one Charger defensive end, but
Yeah.
Von Miller, what a great job by everybody at One Bills Drive keeping quiet on that, because a name like that to not get out and to shock virtually everyone across the national landscape, that's just unbelievable and tells you how tight-knit the Bills front office is, because that's just unheard of throughout the league. That doesn't happen elsewhere. And that's part of what makes Brandon Beane Big Baller Beane. He finds a way to make these big deals, and Sal Capaccio alludes to it sometimes. Sometimes it's just having an open door policy where you tell an agent, hey, you do your thing, look out for yourself, but when you're ready, get in touch with us and we'll talk. And if we can make it work, we'll make it work. There's no reason ever just be closed on a player. Every player has value. It's just finding what value fits with your organization. And I think that's one thing that makes Brandon Beane so great, is he doesn't really shut the door on potential opportunities. He's always open to what can make the team better.
Absolutely. And I think we promise we're going to get into like what is left for the Bills. That's our closing segment. So we're going to need some reactions from you guys on, like, literally, we're going to want your opinions on what the Bills should do to fill out this roster. So stay tuned to that kind of segment to end the show, because it's a pretty important one, and one I feel pretty passionate on. Like, what do the Bills need to do to take it to the next step, the final level, if anything? So we're going to discuss that here to close out the show later on this evening. But realistically, the next topic of discussion we have to talk about is QB2. Like, let's be honest. What happens if their primetime, the best player in the NFL, Josh Allen, goes down? What happens? Like, great, you have a defense that can hold you in games, especially now with what they've been able to build. But what's going to happen? They had an insurance policy in Mitchell Trubisky, a guy that signed in day one of free agency to go be the Steelers starter, essentially. Are they going to be able to do the same thing this year? And to me, I said prior to last season, that was one of the Bills' biggest needs was QB2, because the way your quarterback plays, he's tough as nails. He generally pops up from everything, but you cannot say what will happen if he takes a cheap shot, or if he takes a shot to the knees, or someone gets frustrated and throws something at him, whether there's a 15-yard penalty or not, doesn't bring Josh Allen back into the game. So we need some type of insurance policy. We saw the Matt Barkley coat, swinging from Pittsburgh, his tweet. It does look like he's coming back. There's no regard if that's QB2, QB3, or some coach's role, which potentially was the avenue for Webb. Like, we also don't know if it's just Josh Allen's friend. As we've kind of laughed about together internally at Cover One, was like, is it just Josh Allen's friend that he's someone familiar with? He lost his entire QB room from Mitch to even Fromm, who wasn't tendered. So I guess essentially he could bring back Fromm as a developmental guy too. But right now, it's probably Matt Barkley on the QB3 front. Could be a practice squatter where he was the entire season, a Davis Webb role. I don't see him as the quarterback too. And I'll go as far as saying I would be disappointed to build an entire plan out like you have on the defense and then bring someone, in my opinion, who bounced around from 4 teams last year.
Yeah, there's no way.
Practice squads.
There's no way.
He goes 0-4 depending on who they play, obviously. He goes 0-4 in a 4-game stretch. I really think, like, possibly 1-3. The team is that good. Quarterbacks are a really important team. If they went 1-3 or 2-2, that'd be a miracle, and it would have nothing to do with Matt Barkley.
Barkley, he's just not at that level to be a QB2 at this point. If you want him as a third string or have him in the locker room as a friend of Josh Allen, that's fine, but not QB2. Last year showed he's just not at that level to be a quality backup in the NFL. There's a reason why they brought Mitch Trubisky in last year, and that's because the Bills value the backup quarterback position. They don't want to sacrifice an entire season during a Super Bowl contending period for this organization because of an injury. Now, granted, whoever you have at backup quarterback, you're going to have a downgrade from Josh Allen. You're not going to have that same level of performance, but you hope that you have somebody that can at least split a couple games to keep you staying where you want to be. I still think Fitzy is a tremendous idea if he's willing to come on a cheap deal. I know some of the Cover One guys have been mentioning Fitz as a good possibility, and I think that would work if he's willing to come to Buffalo. There's a couple other names out there right now. I think it's just there's a game of musical chairs with the quarterbacks. You just need to see how it plays out. There's some guys that are probably still holding some outside hope of getting a better role or getting more money, but if a guy like Teddy Bridgewater landed in Miami for a backup contract, there's some guys out there that you could still go after that would be a quality addition to the Bills.
And I see some Kyle Allen. He did get signed. That was a big note, I think, to Houston, and that was a big note of like he is Josh Allen's friend. So I think at some points there was that connection. So he is not an available name, but here are some available names as of this moment to be QB2 roles. The aforementioned Ryan Fitzpatrick is obviously one of them. What a story. We're bringing back the band, right, guys? We're bringing back the band. Bring back Robert Woods while we're at it. Could Ryan Fitzpatrick finish out his career here? He would love to if that was a call that Brandon Beane would make. So potential right there. What happens with Jameis? Does he go and start in New Orleans? Most likely. We got to see how that plays out. Could Andy Dalton, a name that has been loved among Buffalo, especially as a backup, does that make sense? I think he could be into that. Cam Newton, a guy at one point they said was the playing style of Josh Allen as a backup. It is a possibility. Like it is someone that you have to take, consider not starting, nor would you want him to see a single game, but could he come in a pinch? That is something that would go down. Marcus Mariota is another name that's still available. Jacoby Brissett, Trevor Siemian, Josh Johnson, Geno Smith. There's some names that are still available, and then you get thinner as you go down the list from there. So those are kind of the quarterback twos that you'd be looking for to kind of go with Matt Barkley. And I don't know. I think most of those names or all of those names are better than Matt Barkley. So it just depends where the cutoff is. Or do they go the route of, with all these draft picks, guys, like I've seen a lot of people starting to trade back, and I get the idea of trading back in the draft, but you have limited roster spots. What are you going to cut them? Like, what are you going to do with your rookies? Who are you moving from? Very vet heavy team being built, very vet heavies. Look at this. Jordan Phillips. We've seen some talks in the chat about Shaq Lawson being on the roster bubble. He's a guy I think he brings more than F.A. Obata, and he made the team last year. So essentially, I think the D-line set, I don't think there's movement there outside of an injury or some really poor play. I don't think any of them will be on poor enough contracts to where you'd cut anybody across the D-line. It's possible, but I think with a couple of the names you've already lost in Harrison Phillips, you've moved on from Star Lotulelei, Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, F.A. Obata. There are plenty of roster spots there, to go around. So I don't believe Shaq's on the roster bubble. I think the point of him waiting a little bit longer, because quite frankly, he thought he might get a little bit more money, had to pass some physicals, had to do some stuff along those fronts. But don't forget Justin Zimmer's hurt. Vernon Butler's gone. So there are some roster spots to be had at the defensive line. I think they're fairly set there, maybe at a late round addition potentially. So with all that being said, though, they don't have the room for 10 rookies to be added to the room at all. So is quarterback a move you make? I don't know. You need a guy developing behind your starter. You don't take him in the first round like Green Bay did, but there is a range that could make sense, 3 to 4 to 5, that, you would think about it with the approval of Josh Allen, of course, a guy that he might like the potential of, as well as he's basically part of the franchise front office. So you would pass it by him and see what would happen at some point in the draft that Josh is comfortable with, not whatever Green Bay thought that they were doing with Aaron Rodgers, what a bizarre scenario. So there are some quarterback twos left available. Matt Barkley's a QB3 for now until we hear otherwise. And trust me, I'll be a little bit nervous if he does upgrade to QB2. So, I do think that a rookie could be used on that position. So we'll bring it at you. We'll bring some shorts about some quarterbacks that we have in mind, and we'll see kind of how this plays out now that Deshaun Watson's a Cleveland Brown. What a bizarre scenario there out of nowhere. That is a scenario that went down in Cleveland earlier today. Baker's going to find a new team. Probably already has, as we've been on air. If anybody knows anything on Baker, feel free to tell us. I don't know, is he going to Indy? Where's he going? And where's Jimmy G going to go? Where's he going to end up? Once of those kind of figure themselves out, who's left? Could have Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton. At some point, we're going to have some clarity in the QB2 position. So that's, I think, a pretty a pretty important note to follow, Mike, like that we need to see kind of how this plays out. But it is a pretty important position. This is a team that's ready to win now. If they need them in a 2-4-6 game stretch, it's worth talking about. Luckily, we didn't last year, but it's worth talking about because we're transitioning to the AFC arms race now. And are the Bills good enough to win it all? And we talked about the trade that just went down for 3 first-round picks in a draft day special. I felt like it was right there. Like I was in the movie Draft Day with Vontae Mack and the 3. I want your next 3 first-round draft choice for Bo Callahan. If anyone gets the reference, I appreciate it for not making me feel stupid. Mike, you get the reference or no?
I don't
No
get that
draft
one.
day.
Oh, I never decided. I stopped. I was going to watch it. That was the one with Cleveland, right?
Correct. It's supposed to be the Bills.
Supposed to be about the Bills. Yeah. Once they decided to change it to Cleveland, I was a no-go on that. So
okay, that's fine. So they traded 3 first-round draft choices the day of the draft, potential to draft the first overall pick. That's the movie, and I joke because it's almost literally what happened in Cleveland just today. So obviously everyone out there, I appreciate for the inaugural show. Hit the like button. Continue to subscribe to Cover One as you guys already do for our great content. But we're going to bring you the shorts. We're going to bring you all the different heavy hitters, TikTok. You'll see us across social media as you already do. So, Mike, the arms race now. You've seen everybody come to the AFC in a bizarre fashion. At some point, if I was a free agent or if I was somebody, a free agent quarterback now, I'd be like, get me to the NFC because my path to the Super Bowl is literally Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers on a no talent team. And then obviously Tom Brady now again. But like still there's a path there to the NFC championship game if you're in the NFC. Like so I'm like if I'm Baker or I'm Jimmy G or I'm somebody else, I'm like keep me in the NFC or trade me to the NFC. Like there's an easier path there to get to the one game, basically the one game tournament against whomever the Bills or whomever can come out of the AFC. It's a lot easier than having to go through potentially these crazy AFC West teams. What's going on in Buffalo? Obviously, you have KC. The AFC North's kind of trying to stock up a little bit. Like, whew. It's really the AFC South that's taking a hit, losing Watson. Obviously, Indy's, I don't know what they're doing. Jacksonville's kind of lost. So I don't really know what's going on in the AFC South. Tennessee, they're always puttering around. Somehow they go, 13, 14, 12 wins every season somehow. So at some point that's going to come to an end too, Mike. So there's this AFC arms race right now. And luckily the division that potentially has the most room for error is the AFC East. New England's not doing anything. We love to see it. We love to see New England struggling, not be able to get free agents. Matt Judon's can't recruit anybody. There's been tons of jokes there. New England's not doing a thing. The big joke right now is their one signing that they made, a Ty Montgomery. And they have a caller in Boston, like Montgomery, like calling like the line. And it's a fantastic.
Hey, they're getting life of what it's like to not be a contender. They had some fun last free agency when they thought they were going to return to owning the division, but life hit them fast, especially in the playoffs. What you got to talk about right now with this arms race is the AFC is just loaded. It's going to be a dogfight, and I am so thankful that the Bills play in the AFC East and not the West or the North, because I was counting it up earlier today. There's 12 or 13 teams on paper where you look in the AFC and you say they could be a 500 or better team. You have the entire AFC West. Let's be real. All 4 of those teams are capable of making the playoffs. The entire AFC North really too. I know Pittsburgh is probably going to take a step backwards, but what if Mitchell Trubisky ends up elevating his play a little bit? Ben Roethlisberger was horrible last year, and Pittsburgh still sneaked into the playoffs. What if Mitch Trubisky can still play at a decent level? Maybe Pittsburgh's not a team to take for granted. And even with Miami and New England, we don't think they're going to be super dangerous going forward with their situations, but they were still with New England being a playoff team last year and Miami being an above 500 team, they still are capable opponents. So the AFC is just absolutely loaded. And I don't really have a fear from, are the Bills not going to do well? I think the Bills are still going to be the favorites, clearly, with Kansas City, with the talent on the Bills roster. What concerns me more about this arms race is what happens come playoff time. And to make an analogy, me and Kev are big college basketball guys. When you're in a conference tournament, you can be the champion of the regular season and still only have a 20 to 25% chance of winning your tournament, because it's just hard to win consecutive games when you're going up against other quality teams. There's luck involved. There's fluky plays that happen, and there's a lot of things that are out of your control, as we saw last year in the playoffs with some of the things that went down. So now with all these other teams improving and getting their quarterbacks, you go in the playoffs. Say you're playing in the wild card at home in the first round, and you're playing a 7 seed in Cleveland. I mean, that's no gimme. That is going to be a hard game. There's no such thing as an easy ride to the Super Bowl. You look at the NFC, like you just mentioned, you might be Green Bay or Tampa Bay and think you have an easy road to getting to the conference championship. You win that one game, you're playing for it all.
Yeah,
it's going to be a dogfight next January to get to the Super Bowl. And I still believe the Bills will be the team that does it. And the one advantage is they should be able to load up in the regular season and get that 1 seed, because that's going to be important next year. I know both 1 seeds struggled in the playoffs this year, but getting that 1 seed to avoid playing that extra game is going to be incredibly important for Buffalo next season.
Yeah, for sure. The 1 seed's never been more important right now. As you've mentioned in other examples, you need to get that. You need to save yourself a game, and you need to secure the home field advantage and make KC go on the freaking road. Get them on the road. Get them where they're uncomfortable. Make them play on the road finally. So I think it's time. AFC arms race discussion is going to lead us into the remaining needs for the Bills. And here is the most up-to-date list that I have via Mike Clay on the available players. And want to talk to you guys about what you see on the screen right now and like what you think is your favorite players are still available at the positions of need. You see some decent names still up here. We're going to talk about cornerback too now. Also shoot us what you think is the biggest need left for the Bills. I have my opinions. I've been a cornerback 2 guy for the last couple of years. So as you can see on the screen, we still have Stephon Gilmore, Janoris Jenkins, Bryce Callen, Steven Nelson, Dante Jackson, Jason Verrett, Patrick Peterson, Joe Hayden. So there are some names still at that cornerback position that could come in, be day 1 starters, and give you something that you need in case Trey's not ready in time. Because right now the room is pretty simple. It's Taron Johnson as your slot corner, which is a starter in the Buffalo Bills base defense. You also obviously have Trey White if he's healthy, and then you have Dane Jackson. Now there's some thoughts to be said that Dane Jackson is probably more suited for that cornerback 4. He's had some experience now. He could be your veteran presence that you need for a younger cornerback too, as he's starting to get older, not older, but he's starting to get some experience himself. Cam Lewis is a good fill-in and Saran Neal. So you have some of that depth in the back of your roster that I like a lot. Little bit of strong talent on the front of that roster. That leaves you cornerback 2 kind of as that available option. And as we've seen in the chat already, people talking about that cornerback 2 spot being a position that you can actually grow upon and that bring in a vet presence, not necessarily waste that first round asset, which quite frankly to me, give Josh Allen another weapon. That's my opinion on where they should go with the first round pick in terms of where they're at now. So I'm going to be team receiver pretty much for the rest of the offseason right now, unless something changes. So with Juju going to KC, could there be moves to still be made at the receiver room? I mean, there's some solid names still there. Jarvis Landry, who was linked to the Bills at one point. What does Odell Beckham Jr. do? Do you like Julio Jones? Do you like Jamison Crowder? Do you like MVS? Does Sanders come back? A Sammy Watkins renewal? So there's kind of all of that positioning to be jockeying for, for some of those snaps there. It's possible that they go that route. So we really need to see what happens. Best playmaker available. That's what I see here. Love it. Like, yeah, absolutely. Best playmaker available. Give Josh Allen. Do the opposite of what Green Bay did. How can we say that? Do the opposite of what Green Bay did, Mike, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would love a wide receiver in the first or the second round. I've been talking about Jameson Williams all offseason. He's a guy I absolutely love. I know that some people are concerned about his ACL injury that he suffered in the college football playoffs late in the season, but he's a guy that is dynamic. Was at Ohio State for 2 years, really didn't get much run there. Goes to Alabama, becomes their number 1 wide receiver, and just went off. He's a guy that has incredible speed, can go over the top, And that's, I think, the perfect thing for this Bills offense. You already know that you got a tremendous route runner, a guy that just gets the ball, a baller, and Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis showed that he can take on a much bigger load as the number 2 or potentially number 3, depending on what you need him to do. You add another top skill level wideout in the first round. You pair that with McKenzie as probably your 4, your 5, you're more of your gadget guy. And then what's left, maybe add someone in free agency. You don't need a big name guy, but I think a Jarvis Landry, if you can make it work with the cap, would definitely be something I would be intrigued with. He still can contribute at a high level. He's a quality veteran, good blocker as well. Those are what I'm thinking. And then corner, try to add a veteran, not anything too expensive, and then draft one early in probably the second round, somewhere high. You can never have enough players at the skill positions, is my opinion.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how long it takes for him to get healthy and what could transpire out of his medicals. But I trust the Bills medical staff. I trusted their rehab facilities. As someone we forgot to mention today, Mike, OJ Howard, the Bills' new tight end too. What a gaping hole that they had. They couldn't play Tommy Sweeney late in games. That was an issue. So they bring some speed on the tight end room, and an OJ Howard, a guy that could put it all together, who has put some good blocking on film too. So we'll see how that looks. I have to look into him more and kind of see some more clips. And kind of do a little bit more on him.
Potential coming out of Alabama. OJ Howard was a guy a lot of people were high on out of college in Tampa Bay. Wasn't willing to trade him, despite a lot of people inquiring about him in recent years. Like the comment from Kendall Mursky about Williams. Needs to still improve his route running ability, but the speed is undeniable. Completely agree. Whatever wideout you're going to draft at 25, there's going to be some things you're going to need to work on. But it's that skill set he has that's just he just has so much potential entering the lineup once able to take the field after recovering from his injury. But I love the possibility of OJ Howard. That's a buy low and see what he can produce. He wants to get an opportunity in the NFL, coming to Buffalo on a 1-year deal. That's a guy I'm expecting some decent things out of this upcoming season.
Thank you, Mark. I agree with you fully. I am on team when you don't have a quarterback and you have so many holes, absolutely trade back. Like, definitely depending on the draft, depending on the talent. I'm not like lying in the sand guy. I'm certainly playmakers. I was certainly pushing the table for Travis Etienne last year. I was certainly pushing the table for Najee Harris. So I will admit that I am playmakers in the first round, like playmakers that help your franchise quarterback out. I don't need to have this line in the sand. First round quarterbacks when you are first round running backs when you don't have a quarterback, that makes no sense. Like, it's literally team specific, right? And there is different values across all sports. But like, look, you take these extreme flyers on the quarterback position. Like, I think you can take a late first round pick on a running back who could totally change the dynamic of your program, exclusively of your running game, of your run fits and what they're able to do and the pressure they're able to take off. The pressure they're able to take off your offensive line. Offensive linemen love to run block. They'll tell you that. So there is a lot of that, and the Bills are pretty pass heavy. So I don't put a line in the sand. I don't necessarily pounding the table for anybody this year. I want them to do what's best for them to bring in high level talent. They don't have a lot of loss. We're sitting here talking about his Shaq Lawson on the roster bubble. We don't have a ton of roster spots, period. So why are we going to go and use 12 picks, trade back, instead of having a pick at, 25, pushing it back and have your first pick at 50? Like, I don't know. Eventually, the odds you hit those picks, it's a little bit smaller. You're hoping that the odds go up because you have so many. But quality over quantity on the 2022 Buffalo Bills and beyond. You want that fifth-year option at certain position groups, especially in the receiver room with these crazy contracts. Cornerback as well. Like, you just don't want to mess around with the free agent market at some of these position groups. And quite frankly, like, we have something to do with offensive guard now. Like, Ryan Bates is on like tour de Bates right now. Like, he's like off and going to Minnesota and New England, and like, there's something to be said. So they just tendered him at the second round level, but then like the mindset is you're throwing $1.5 million away to do that. Like, and RFAs 1 or 2 get signed a year at most. So like, you just throw $1.5 million away. the Bills will have the option to totally accept whatever deal that he accepts. So they're letting somebody else do the work, but at the same time, they don't get compensation. So should the Bills have taken $1.5 million? Yeah, but hindsight's 2020 in this topic. Like, of course they should have given him a second round tender. But that's easy to say now when he's on tour to friends, going around everywhere and meeting everybody. Apparently he's the most wanted RFA in the last 3 years, but played really well for a championship level team. You know what? He's got those opportunities. Can Bean match it? Yeah, Bean can absolutely match whatever he needs to do to make that happen, Mike. But do you see anything on this screen that sticks out to you right now before we transition to kind of who we are, what we're going to bring to the table? Selecting one of you great people. Go on our Twitter right now if you haven't already and just retweet that. We'd love a live viewer to win that Andre Reed signed jersey. Pretty easy to find right on our main feed, the Going Deep Pod Twitter account. You'll see that it's been tweeted all over. We'd want somebody to win that. We'd really appreciate a listener to win that. So go ahead and do that now. But Mike, do you see anything on this screen that Mike Bunt says, I need the Bills to add today? I don't want to say the missing link. The Bills don't have a missing link, but the final piece to the puzzle to help the Bills bring it home. Could be QB 2. It could be receiver 2, cornerback 2, offensive guard. Mike, what are you looking at? And tell me why.
Yeah, at this point, I really don't have a missing piece or link that I think will help the Bills get over the hump to anything much more than what they are right now. I like the idea of Jarvis Landry. I like the idea of adding a veteran corner. But if you're asking me to name a name, that's just guesswork at this point in time. The Bills are dealing with limited money. They've already had to restructure a bunch of contracts just to fit in the guys that they've brought in right now. I think at this point, I'm just looking to get some veterans in, maybe another wideout, another corner, draft one at each position, and just take it from there. Whoever Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott think are the guys to go with, I'll trust their instincts because you could throw darts and make a bunch of guesses. That's not going to really help you when you don't really know what they're essentially targeting at this point in time.
Yeah, that's fair. Of course, we didn't even know when it came to Von Miller. So what could we really know at this stage? But in my opinion, I think you save receiver for the draft. In my opinion, I think the best veteran quarterback you can afford, cornerback that you can afford, the better. I think that's what could really help bring this to the next level. But will the Bills double down on that in the draft, triple down on that in the draft? They could. So it just depends. But I do think that you need to look at that and say, unless it's a high level receiver, you really have a way to work in Odell Beckham, or I guess you want to consider Jarvis Landry a high level receiver, or making a trade for DK Metcalf or other goofy scenarios like that they could try to entertain. Sure. But I think that Josh Allen will make the most of his receiver room. You're giving Isaiah McKenzie a shot. You're giving Gabriel Davis a shot. Obviously, you have Stephon Diggs. You have the 2 tight ends now.
I will say one thing. It would be nice to get an RB2 upgrade. I think
with Cordell Patterson sitting there, he brings more than just that. Brings the return ability, the ability to play.
You know me. I'm not a very heavy invest in the running back position guy. It has to be the right fit, the right guy, fit the system. But I did like the signing earlier in the week before it fell apart.
Oh, how could we forget J.D. McKissic?
Yeah, I did like the J.D. McKissic signing. It's unfortunate that fell apart the way it did with Washington kind of getting under Bean's skin a little bit. Oh, I would love Christian McCaffrey, but that unfortunately doubt that's going to be a realistic option, even if Brandon Bean probably wishes he could have him. Patterson, another intriguing idea as a gadget guy that can do almost anything on an offense. So yeah, those are a couple of the guys, type of things that would be interesting. A Patterson, a Jarvis Landry, a number 2 running back that maybe adds a little bit to the passing game. But other than that, I'm not really particular. I'm looking forward to this draft and continuing to add the skill positions. I think after quarterback and addressing your lines, the skill positions are the most important positions in football. And right now, even though we know the Bills' offensive line isn't tremendous by any means, it looks like they're pretty much set with how they want to attack it, pending what happens with the Bates situation.
Yeah, and as we can see on the screen here, there are some good running backs available for anyone that can see. You know, there's Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, Cordell Patterson, Ronald Jones. Penny's a guy I like. There's still quite a few, you know, Tariq Cohen for all the Cohen fans. You know, Williams is a popular name. I really wouldn't go much lower than that, to be honest, other than a, you know, vet minimum deal. Some of these guys are vet minimum deals to me, but really starts to change around Williams range of guys that could come in and add something to your team. So I think that avenue will be explored. The Bills will get a good deal. They were willing to spend 3.5 already. Did they put that money toward OJ Howard? Probably. That's a direct contract. So it seems very similar that they lost out on him and said, you know what, we're going to go fill tight end 2. That's our next. OJ Howard's the next need that we have before, you know, giving that same money to running back. So I think that's kind of more like player focused. And Boy was being mad at Washington. For some reason, doesn't blame the agent, which is interesting, which leads me to believe the ownership GM, something went right to the player.
Well, you heard his comments. At the one point, he said, when you have an agreement in place, it's the duty of the agent to basically tell teams, this is done. We have a deal in place. This is done. And from what he said at the press conference, it sounded like McKissick's agent had said, we got a deal in place. Like, this is it. And that Washington just kept going and going and going until it flipped. And it also sounds like Washington never really went to McKissick with an offer until he already signed with the Bills. And then when they heard that, they matched it. Now, the unfortunate part is they were able to do it. None of it was official because it was the tampering period. So unfortunately, there's nothing you really can say to Washington. And maybe it's unwritten rules of general management not to do that, but they chose to, and Bills have to live with the consequences.
Yeah. So there's some running back names. I do think they bring one in. I do think that's for sure. How good of a name? I don't know. I hope it's at least a mid-tier name. How good we won't know until it happens. So I do think that's probably on the fold. Man, if you can get Cordell Patterson to come win a championship, what an addition he would be for so many reasons. You'd be able to tick so many boxes with him and his abilities. So that I would take personally, I would take Cordell Patterson into the draft and doing what you need to do, because I think he would bring enough, and you can fill him in so many roles. Like, what a creative guy to have on your team. I feel like Josh Allen could get a lot out of Cordell Patterson. So so that versatility is something that they look for. Can play special teams. You know, is he still the top end returner that he's known to be? All that kind of stuff could be ticking a bunch of boxes. Running back 2, they were weak. Special teams returns, they were weak. That missing screen guy, ability to yak. We all love to talk about yak now. That's the topic of discussion. Can bring you that. So he can tick all those boxes in one signing. You sign him, you make a little bit of room for him, and you move on to the draft. That's kind of where I'm at in my final opinion. Is someone like that, I think, kind of brings that next level of talent for me. And to kind of wrap it all up here, like, I do believe there's always money available. So if they do find someone that could bring this team to the next level, they're not going to invest in Von Miller and say, yeah, we're not going to do everything we can to win. I do believe that they could really take out a coupon if they really needed to somewhere to make room, if that's the case. Even Bean doesn't like rentals. So even on a 1-year basis, if they need to do so. So yes, there are still ways to create cap space. They can do extensions. They can convert somebody's salary over a course of 2 or 3 years. Pretty simple. Let's say you're owed a $9 million base salary and you have 3 years left. You lop it all off and you divide it by 3, essentially, because you're turning it into a signing bonus. That is the most basic way to look at it. So you could free up 2/3 of it, essentially. So yes, there's always money to be had if you want to push it out. So, and it's a player you feel comfortable with being on your roster long term. Certainly not that Star Lotulelei situation you don't want to get yourself into. That's definitely for sure. So appreciate everyone's thoughts on what the Bills should do to get better. Completely Cordell Patterson is the next level of player for me. Kind of that, I think the range now free agency's been going hopefully for a week here shortly. That week 2, you can get that value more at the 4 to 6, something in there the Bills would feel comfortable with bringing that type of talent to the roster, and be able to tick a couple of boxes and feel good on game day when he's active, and not have to like say, how do we fit in Andre Roberts? This guy actually helps you in many places on the roster, not just on teams, not just on the offense, not just in a niche role. You already have kind of a niche player in McKenzie. Can McKenzie bring more to the slot? We'll find out shortly. Can Diggs bring stuff to the slot? That's a potential too. If you found a true boundary receiver, someone that can change the game, can you move Diggs around? That could be an option, and he could really be game breaking with the ability to go either way as kind of an improv route runner, the ability to create separation. All of that might be good against some of the weaker slot corners in this league. So there is that ability for Diggs to kind of pop inside if that's so be it. And Diggs, and he's someone that you can do a lot of stuff with money. So he's a real wild card to the offense as always, and as well as his cap situation, extensions, bonuses, ways to extend him out. The Devontae Adams deal was crazy. Kirsten Kirk was crazy. So there's a lot to look. The Bills are kind of treading lightly there right now, and what they need to do on the receiver room specific to Diggs. So Mike, you got to tell the people we've been 50 minutes here. Appreciate everybody tuning in. But people want to know what Mike Bunt is going to bring to the Going Deep podcast on the Cover One Network. Why don't you tell everybody what we're looking forward to, what you're working on, what people can expect from this show Fridays at 8, and our shorts as well.
Yeah, so we're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One Network. Obviously, everyone that's watching this video is probably well in tune with what Cover One does. They're great with the analytics, great with the film and everything like that. I want to focus on that stuff, but also more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo? How does Bills Mafia feel about certain moves, things like that? But I also want to add a different dynamic as well with these short videos that you guys have seen us do throughout the past week. We were doing some buy or sell shorts, but we want to just kind of add a bunch of different things, whether it's adding some short videos on TikTok, or adding 2 to 3 minute shorts on YouTube, where we just talk about different topics in a quicker fashion, not something that's over a longer period of time. As you guys know, Kev has been part of Cover One in the past. I'm newer to the Bills podcasting world, but I actually used to be a sports anchor in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Central Ohio. I've covered a lot of college sports. I've covered a bunch of different things throughout the sporting universe, some minor league baseball, minor league hockey, NBA G League, video anchoring, reporting. That's my background. So I'm going to try to bring that perspective to the show. It's going to be weekly, Friday nights at 8:00. So you can expect us right here on YouTube every Friday at 8, but also expect a video or two throughout the week on different topics. And then we're going to get a TikTok page up soon, so make sure to look out for that. But yeah, we're trying to bring just another dimension to the Cover One Network. This is a great team. We're excited to be part of it, and we really can't wait to get rolling with everything. This is just kind of a mock-up of everything we're doing, but once we get everything together, it should be a special product. So we're really can't wait to get this all rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yep, we'll be weekly. We'll be right here at you. We'll be bringing it for you. We'll be bringing that. We love the interaction. We'll be, communicating with you guys. We want to be able to talk to you guys. We want you guys' input on the show. Definitely. We'll be releasing our own shorts throughout the week and kind of talking about it like we did. We did buy or sell on a lot of stuff this week. We got a bunch of it, in pretty good standing. Like we sold Kirk, we sold Nwosu, we sold a couple of those names. I thought we brought it. We bought Chandler Jones, but we were fooled by our own Brandon Bean. And Von Miller was really where they wanted to spend the money, but still that same money appropriation that we were thinking about in that segment. So watch out for those short segments. Thanks, Warren. I really appreciate that. So everybody tune in Fridays. I'm an old man. I've got my second on the way. So Fridays to me, talking about the Bills. What else would you rather be doing than talking about the Bills? And we'll be getting out a graphics package. We'll be doing a bunch of stuff here to brand this show going forward.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great because on Friday nights, it's not the prime time slot, but it's the perfect time to, once the season gets rolling, to really talk about the week that was and how they're getting ready for an opponent, and then kind of a preview of the game before the pregame. So obviously on Sunday, you're feeling hyped. You have all that emotion going on. Friday, kind of a last opportunity to look at it critically, remove the emotions, and just have a good time talking football. So we're hoping to provide that to you guys every week.
I will say that about Fridays, though, guys. If you're lame like me and you want to do nothing else but think about and talk about the Bills on Friday, and in my younger years, I was ripping up Chippewa. I was down, doing some stuff wherever across Buffalo, across Rochester, across Western New York in general, Ellicottville. We were ripping it up. But right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I never had a championship caliber team to talk about. And Corbett, you fire something off and we'll talk about it. If you have anything that you're still here, would love to keep you around. If you have anything specifically you want to talk about, obviously review our show, talk about it. Go back, watch it on YouTube. We'll be on all your podcast platforms as well. So if you want to tune in at a different time, we know Fridays at 8, if you're out with your family, whatever. So we want you guys to listen to this on all the podcast networks across the board in terms of, your Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc. Anywhere that you find your podcast, we'll be delivering that to you on a Friday basis. Me too, man. Like Josh, I feel you. Like we're gonna hit that niche of people that want to talk about the Bills before game day on Fridays, and don't have anywhere to be. So that's kind of our goal here. Mike, we're sorry to bring you. We're kind of sorry to wrap you into that, but you're gonna have to participate as well. And Christian Wade is on the roster as of right now. He did sign. He is coming back as of this minute. So we'll see. I mean, that could change at any second, but as of this second, that's kind of the spin on it. So yeah, guys, we really appreciate everybody coming in. Stay tuned. We have a jersey announcement too coming at you. Got to do the random selector. So we're going to go through all that, and anyone who's retweeted that, we'll give you guys a few minutes to, after you watching this show, to go ahead and retweet that, because we'd love to give it to someone who watched this inaugural show. And we'll release that on our Twitter page with the winner of that and ship that out. Yeah, absolutely. Dad life for life. That is the best way to put it. This Friday does have a niche. So, tune in with us every single week on Fridays, whether it's in season, off season, and we'll have great guests, Mike. Neither of us mentioned that. I have a pretty good network of guests from across the league, from high-level reporters to great podcasters. Mark Schofield, my guy over Pat's Pulpit.
Love Mark.
We have Matt Weston, Battle Red blog from the Texans. What a great. I love when we play the Texans, not because they stink, but because he's a great guest, man. He loves the Bills. He knows the Texans inside and out. So we'll bring you those guests that we have our networked with, throughout the year. So we're going to bring guests, injuries, Kyle, our own Kyle, that we work with here from Banged Up Bills, etc. We're going to have on injury shows. We're going to do different roundtables. We'll bring in some cover one guys as well when they're available here on our team. So plenty to like. If we need something film related, we have so many resources to get at you with some of that content as well. So you tweet us your favorite show, your guests, and we'll get them on as well. If you have someone across across the scope of the world, Jenna Harner in Pittsburgh, we have such a good network of people that we like. And let's talk Jets, man. Great Jets visits whenever we play them twice a season. Tyson Rauch from Let's Talk Jets. What a guest, man. You will want to tune into that edition, the 2 Jets games that we have this year, because Tyson is a great guest, brings a great passion and a great YouTube crowd that will probably funnel people into the show. So you guys will need to battle them from the Jets point of view, because he does. We have people that come in after, the show, Mike, from his network. So watch out for the Let's Talk Jets. And we want to bring you on some of the best guests from across Bills land as well as we can. So from the Going Deep podcast inaugural show, Kevin Misseri, Mike Bunt, any final words for the viewers, Mike?
I'm just pumped. Talking Bills football is a lifestyle for me. If I'm at work, I'm talking Bills to customers, and I'm talking Bills to all my coworkers. So this is just an extension of what I love to do on a daily basis, and I'm excited to have the Cover One team and all of you guys watching to discuss everything happening with them on a daily, weekly, yearly basis. So let's go. Let's have some fun with this, and can't wait to to make this into something special.
And we'll have a good intro and outro coming at you soon too. So watch out for that. That'll be a special part of our show. But as Josh Allen says, go Bills, and we're going deep.